Yep. Students, counselors, families, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever it is in the world you are joining us. Thank you so much for joining StriveScan and our virtual college exploration program. These next 4 days are in partnership with the Colleges That Change Lives, CTCL. A few housekeeping items before we begin with Reed College. First and foremost, you are encouraged to ask questions throughout this session via the Q&A button that you see on your screen. When you submit a question, it will be sent to our panelists, and they'll work to answer the question during the session and at the conclusion of the session as well. As a reminder, your camera and your microphone are turned off so the panelists cannot see or hear you. So if you have any questions, type them in through that Q&A. This is one of 50 panel presentations and individual information sessions that the Colleges That Change Lives are running through Tuesday evening. We encourage you to go to strivescan.com/virtual/CTCL, the same space you went to register for this session, to sign up for those additional sessions through Tuesday evening. When you sign up for today, you received a barcode. You do not need that barcode for this virtual event. And we are recording this session and all of the sessions. And the recordings will be made available later today at strivescan.com/virtual/CTCL, that exact same place you went to register. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to the panelists from Reed College.
Excellent. Good to see everyone. My name is Milian Trulov. I'm the Vice President and Dean of Admission and Financial Aid. And I'm here with my colleague, Hui Tren, who will be answering many of our questions, or will be answering many of your live questions. And I just want to make sure that all of you learn everything you want to know about Reed College. And so I won't be able to cover everything right now. So of course, I'll invite you to come and join us for some of our online sessions. We have at least a dozen different types of sessions going on every week. This past week was our college application week, where we help families write essays, master the interview, and those will continue throughout the year. But one of the things that I always think about, particularly when it comes to the college search, is how challenging it is and how you have to navigate this fairly complicated process. It starts off and you just don't know very much about it. I love to talk about my little sister, who, when she first set foot on the campus that she would eventually attend, she tells a story about being among a really large tour group, and there were like maybe 15, 20 people packed tight on the sidewalk on this cloudy, rainy day, and it was somewhere between the residential hall and the student center that this miraculous event happened. As they funneled down, she paused, because when she looked up into the sky, the clouds parted, and this beam of light came down on her and no one else. And she tells me she heard this noise like, oh, like the angels sang. And she thought, oh my gosh, this is the place where I want to be for 4 years. Now, maybe that's happened for you and that's great. You know, maybe it's a condition, but for my little sister, it was like a bolt of lightning. And as much as I'd love for a bolt of lightning to happen to all of us, it doesn't happen to everyone. So you do things like come and listen to me speak about my college, listen to other schools speak about their college. Really quickly, I'm going to give you 3 tips that I think are really helpful. Just about everything I share with you and other colleges share with you falls into 3 buckets. Academics, your major, how you're going to study, how you're going to learn, the learning environment and how you'll be engaged. Social atmosphere, who your friends are, what you're going to do when you're on campus, how you're going to have fun, how you're going to make lifelong friendships. And the third one, a lot of people just don't even consider, but it's the emotional, spiritual component. Am I on a college campus where people will take care of me? Do I feel safe? Do I feel like I'm going to fall through the cracks? And if I do, someone's going to be there to catch me. For some of us, that might be a religious atmosphere. You know, what type of religious atmosphere do I want to study in? For some of us, it's what kind of values do I want to live out in my college experience? And I would invite you all to think about everything you learn about falling into those 3 buckets. Because if you figure out the capacity and the amount of what you want in each of these buckets, and you find a school that satisfies that for you, you may have found a home where you want to be for 4 years. Take lots of notes, compare notes. You hear something you like here, compare it at another college. So that's my general college advice to begin with. What I'm going to do today is show you some slides of campus. I think it's really challenging right now to see campus. And so I have a few pictures. I'm going to talk about some stuff while I'm showing these slides. And occasionally I'm just going to pause and speak with you directly without the slide showing. But I'm going to start the slideshow just to get started. And again, if you have questions, my colleague, Hui Tren, the Associate Dean of Admission, is going to answer those while I talk with you. And so you don't have to wait to ask questions. And then at the end, if he hasn't covered anything or if it's coming up in the presentation, we'll say that. And I'll cover a few things later on, assuming that we have time. So let's begin. We're going to learn about Reed, learn how you learn at Reed, learn about life at Reed, and then about going through the application process. So this is our college campus. This is looking towards the east, and it's exactly what you think. We are a college of 1,400 students in the Pacific Northwest, and this is a place that is green. We're in Portland proper. We're not in a suburb. We're actually 15 minutes from downtown. And so you can catch the light rail downtown, you can bike downtown, but we have incredible diversity in terms of our student body. Students travel furthest to Reed than any other college. The campus is diverse with over a third of our students representing US multicultural students and another 15% representing international students. We've got 40 countries represented on our campus. So it's going to be a place where you meet someone from different walks of life, and we really think that enhances the academic atmosphere. We're a national liberal arts school, but we have many acres and a very green campus. This is a bridge that goes over the Reed Canyon. So this is a place where you'll study and you'll also really enjoy your surroundings. Reed is adjacent to the largest natural water body in Portland proper. And so you don't have to give up a really green and beautiful campus for being in a city. You can actually satisfy both of those at the same place. So folks often ask me what type of student would be a good fit for Reed. And I think that occasionally someone has heard someone saying, you know, Reed students are quirky, might have been a word that you've heard pass around. And we actually think quirky is a bad word. Not because quirky students are bad, but because it doesn't focus on what's really important for us. If you are a student who has ever had a conversation with a teacher and you heard something in the classroom and you left, and 2 or 3 days later, you come back in after hours and say, you know what, whoever your teacher is, you mentioned this in class, I've heard some other concepts that really seem like they fit. How does this all work out? Tell me how this is all interconnected. That intellectual curiosity, wanting to know more, wanting to talk about ideas, pursuing those ideas beyond the time when they were initiated. If that sounds like you might be a really good fit for Reed. I tell high school counselors, if you have ever been in an office with a student and you were still engaged in that conversation, that by the end of it, you realize that it's passing time and you have to write them a pass to get to the next class, that type of engagement is really indicative of a Reed student. So sometimes really bright students are quirky, but sometimes they're perfectly boring. Reed, about half of our students are varsity athletes, and I don't want students to feel as though you have to manufacture some sort of quirk or quippiness in your application in order to be a real good candidate for admission. We want you to be you, and that's incredibly important for us. Some more about Reed as I share more of my slides. We are a national leader in producing PhDs. Actually, we produce the 4th highest number of PhDs per capita than any other school in the United States, and there's almost 5,000 schools in the United States. Caltech, MIT, and Swarthmore produce more, and we go back and forth, 3rd and 4th with Swarthmore. But the reason I mention that is because if you do well at Reed, you will do well anywhere because you have the capacity to do well. And I'm going to break that down in just a little bit when I talk about other aspects of the school. It's well known that Reed does not participate in US News and World Report. US News and World Report takes a look at 7 or 8 criteria, and they evaluate every schools by using these same values. And although when US News and World Report was launched, we were in the top 10, we decided that what was important to us, there's just no way it could have been important to all the other schools that participated. We no longer thought it was a good fit, so we walked away from that. But I think that quantitative, objective factor of understanding how many PhDs we produce per capita, and student surveys is a much better way to understand the Reed experience. And those are things that we do talk about. Humanities 110. It is essentially a course that all of our first-year students, in which they all participate, and it's taking a look at some of our historical texts to understand the context of the time, whether that's ancient Greece or whether that's the Harlem Renaissance, and something in which all of our students participate. And they participate in these lectures the entire first-year class. We have experts talking about specific topics in their area of expertise. And then those lectures break down into conferences. And these are classes of anywhere from 8 to 16 students roughly, 3 times a week, where they talk with their professors and their other classmates about what they've learned during the week. It's this shared experience that lasts for the entire first year of the Reed experience. One component in particular I think is really cool about Hum 110 is something that we call the paper conference. And the paper conference, well, I'll tell you this, when you turn in a paper or an assignment, you don't get it back with a grade on it. You do get grades at Reed, but you get them if you request your grades. But what you get back immediately is written feedback in the margins, on the back of the paper, and you sit down with your faculty member for an hour to discuss your paper. And during that conversation, they might say something like, you know, you mentioned this idea in class. I'm not seeing it here in the paper. Or this is a really great idea. I want more of this. Or you have 2 competing ideas. Tell me why that is. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Let's go with that. By the time you're done with your paper conference, you're more excited to rewrite that paper before you actually walked in the classroom. And that is a micro example of the entire experience you will have at Reed, where faculty are your partners, where you're engaged in learning, you're talking about ideas, and you're becoming more enthusiastic about the work you produce as your career at Reed goes on. It's something that we think is really profound and makes, I think it's a little bit different. So let's take some more views at the campus. A few other things I want to talk about. We talked about this in-classroom learning and your connection with your professors, but we also have other ways to get off campus and to have fun. This is a place where your academic life can spill into your social life. And so we have something called the Gray Fund. These are about 8 sponsored programs every year. Amanda Gray decided that Reed students also need to have fun. And so they sponsor these incredible trips to Busch Gardens or weightlessness training or theatrical productions every year, in addition to our over 100 student activities that we have on campus. And one of the things that our students do is create accountabilities for their programming. And so we have what's called a top 20 list, and students actually vote for the activities they think are contributing the most. And if their activities are contributing the most, then they actually receive, they continue to receive commensurate funding. And as a result, when you're in charge of a student activity, you have to think about the impact that your student club has on the student body. And so the idea is that this too is important. We probably heard Reed has a research reactor on campus, a nuclear reactor. It has enough power to power a washing machine, but it's still a nuclear reactor, a research reactor on campus. And we actually, at one point and often, employ more female nuclear reactor scientists than all the other nuclear reactors in the United States. This is a place where you don't have to be a physics major to actually be trained to work in our research reactor. It's one of those unique things that Reed offers for people to be able to engage the environment, engage their learning in areas that are outside their discipline. It's true liberal arts. This is a picture of our research reactor. The type of plutonium we use has this unique green-blue glow. And this is a photo from one of the tours in the research reactor. The plutonium there at the bottom, or uranium at the bottom. Students can be active in theater. We have 3 theaters on campus. You can do theater and around. There's a traditional proscenium stage, performing arts. So it's a place where you can become engaged and involved in different aspect of your life. It's a place where, because of our location, you're an hour and a half from the ocean and an hour and a half from the mountains. And so if you're interested in spending some time at the Reed ski cabin, at the ski lodge, you can certainly do that with a group of your friends and then wake up in the morning and climb Mount Hood. We are 2 hours from the desert. And so we're in one of those fantastic zones where if you're a student interested in environmental studies or simply taking part in your environment, there's so many different ways you can do that. Here are a couple of photos of our ski lodge. The one interesting thing about our clubs, we don't have any exclusive clubs. In other words, if you want to be on our intramural soccer team, if you want to be on our club soccer team, you will be on our club soccer team. It's one of the reasons we don't have Division III NCAA sports. Our students can participate in all things we have. That's very intentional, and that's been the way that Reed has existed from the very beginning. Doesn't mean you can't be engaged and can't be competitive. Our basketball team has performed very well in their conference, again, a club basketball team, but it doesn't take away the focus for what you're learning in the classroom. This is one of our outdoor clubs, so if you want to go hiking, if you want to go camping, you can come and gear up. You can belay on our climbing wall. There's a lot of ways that you can continue to be physically active in this space. Dining on campus, Bon Appetit, many of the colleges use this. This is a place that's really great about using locally sourced food, about accommodating a variety of diets. And we are primarily a residential campus. About 80% of our students on a typical year will live on campus. Some students will live in Portland proper, but there's such a variety of ways you can live on campus. These are the Cross Canyon dorms, residential halls that look over the canyon. We also have language houses. This is the garden house. It's a theme house for those who are interested in environmental studies, for them to live together. But there are over 30 different ways that you can live on campus, from apartments to singles to houses to quads, you name it. And it's a place that we've intentionally tried to create spaces in our residential hall for socialization, for getting to know other folks. So in Trillium, you'll see that there's a kitchen on the end of every floor. There's a lounge on the end of every floor that allows for connecting, socializing, and making connections with your other classmates. So another neat thing about campus, this is a photo from Paideia. Paideia is this period of time where our students on campus, and I'm just gonna change my view so I can spotlight myself so you can see me. I think it's spotlighting Hui right now. Hi, Hui. Let's see. Maybe Zach can help us with the spotlight and get that from Hui to me. I'm not sure if I know how to do that. Part of what happens during Paideia is the ability for folks on campus to teach something of particular interest to them. And so during 10 days between the first semester and second semester, our students will come up with these really creative classes. So one of the classes I plan on teaching is a class about comic books. A few years ago, I taught one on conflict resolution. I know there's someone who teaches classes on baking. Teaches classes on smoking meats, you name it. There's a wide variety of things that you can do. And so one of the reasons I bring up Paideia is to show that this intersection of learning and social activities exists at Reed. But also I want to go and start leading into something that we've done for the essay, which I'll talk about in a few moments. When you apply to Reed, we used to have an essay question that said something like this. I want to go to Reed. Or what do you want to go to Reed was essentially what the question was. And folks would answer it. And what we started to find was that if you had visited campus, if you had family members that were familiar with Reed, your answer was great. We loved it. We were like, oh, you know Reed so well. You're speaking our language. And then for someone else who was authentically interested in Reed, they might go to the website, which is what most of us would do, and do research and talk about what research they've learned. And we'd say, oh, that sounds like the website. And so suddenly we're penalizing folks for making an honest effort to answer a question. And as we thought more and more about that and the fact that not every student has the ability to come to campus, we thought, how do we really change this essay so it gives us information we need? And so we met with a group of admission counselors, a group of our student staff, and for 2 months, went through this process of establishing our values, what was important to us, and how we can give anyone a fair chance to express our values. And the question we ultimately ended up with is, what would you teach during Paideia? At the end of the day, when you were excited about an idea, when a candidate was excited about telling us something, we became excited. And we think that everyone, whether or not you visited to Reed, whether or not you have family that's come to Reed, can talk about something that they're so excited about that they'd want to share it with other people. And that's our supplemental essay that we ask you. And these supplemental essays, they seem like they're sort of throwaways. They're really simple. Some people fill them out on their cell phone. Don't fill it out on your cell phone. But they actually are very important. When I have a hard time deciding between two equal candidates, maybe I have one spot who to pick, I go to the Why Reed essay because it helps me understand their fit for our community in terms of their passions and and wanting to express those passions. So spend some time on that, and that's really going to help you craft a more competitive application. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen again and show you a few more slides. And just to let you know, I have my just turned 15-month-old son who's hanging out in the next room, so he might express his enthusiasm for Reed too. So yeah, no problem with that, but he might be around. I'm going to talk a little bit about financial aid, about our test scores. So Reed has a need-based financial aid system, which means that while we might not do merit scholarships, the student surveys say we have some of the best financial aid in the country. That also means that we have on our website a net price calculator, which gives you an idea of how much financial aid you might receive from us. And that's a really good way to entertain a conversation about whether or not it's going to be an option for you. But what I usually say, and I sincerely mean this, is don't start with the price tag when you're looking at schools. Oftentimes the price tag is not what you're going to pay, or it might be very different. And you actually don't know that usually until March or April. At the beginning, that's your exploration of colleges, finding out the schools in which you're interested, and you're also determining value. Is this school valuable for me? Is it important? So when you sit down at the table, either you parents or you students, and you're having discussions about your schools and the price tag, what you might say is, this school cost a little bit more than these other places, but it's absolutely worth it. Or you might have two schools and you think they're of equal value, and the difference in price here makes this school worth it. But those are conversations that are really helpful in March or April when you've learned everything about a college, and you can take the price tag and see whether or not it feels appropriate with what quality you'll think you'll receive from that school. So I always invite people to think about price at the end rather than the beginning, when you get more information and you can create this robust relationship and make that really important decision when you have all the information about how much the impact is for you. Our application process, we really talk about being transparent. If you want to know how to be competitive, give us a call. If you want to know whether or not this is a great essay for you, give us a call. We accept both the coalition application and the common application. By far more people use the common application, and the common app is doing something really brilliant this year. They've got this question that says, how has the pandemic affected you? And I think it's brilliant. I think Common App knows that this has been such a powerful experience for us these days that many students would have filled out a pandemic question or completed their essay talking about the pandemic, but it would not have left any opportunity for us to talk about you outside of the pandemic. And this is an optional question, but think about it as an escape valve. So you can talk about very important experiences about the pandemic here if you want to, but then use the other essay to tell a different story that's more personal, that gives us a better reflection about you, that's not about all this COVID stuff. And I think that's going to help you put your best foot forward. Again, I think it's kind of brilliant. Common App is doing that this year. And no, you don't have to do that supplemental COVID pandemic essay, but it's there for a tool if you choose to use it. We do both binding and non-binding processes. So we have early action and regular decision. Those are just regular old deadlines. Early action, you apply early, you find out early, it's not binding. And I usually tell folks, if we're talking right now, there's almost no reason why you shouldn't consider early action. Why do I say that? Because right now, if you're talking about schools, you have enough time to prepare for these usually often in November deadlines. In addition to that, admission rates for most schools tend to be more favorable in early action. It's worth getting your information in early. They'll make decisions, burden the hand with the students they have in front of them, and they'll admit the competitive students then, and they may have less room in regular decision, particularly if it's a more selective school. I'm not saying this is every school, but in my experience, most schools have a more favorable admission rate in early action. The same is true of Reed. Early decision, you apply early, you find out early, it's not binding. If by the time that comes around, you feel like Reed is the place for you and where you want to be for 4 years, ED is a great decision. That has the most favorable admission rates at Reed and at most schools. And the financial aid you would get at Reed during ED is the exact same you would get during early action and the exact same you get in regular. Because it's the one loophole. If you don't feel satisfied with your financial aid package, you can withdraw from early decision and say, I'm going to go and apply to other schools. Now, your relationship is then over with that particular school, but it is an escape valve. And it does help you, even if you sign up to this binding process, say, I just can't do it. Now, the great thing about ED is that there's 2 other people besides you who are talking to you about this. There's an agreement, and that agreement needs to be signed by your parent, and that agreement needs to be signed by your high school counselor. 2 people who know you very well, who could advise you on whether or not early decision is the best choice for you. And so I like that objective audience that's sort of telling you if that's right for you. For Reed, if students apply early decision, over 95% of the students do end up attending. And I say that because for me, that's an indication that 95 of the students thought it was exactly what they were getting into. They felt comfortable with the financial aid and they wanted to say yes. And so if that helps encourage an early decision option if you're vacillating, I just wanted to share that with you. Let's see, the Common App opens, I think on the 15th. It should be open right now. Now, some colleges will open their app deadline at different dates, so some a little bit later, some a little bit early. By September 1st, everyone should have opened their Common application. If you go there and you can't click on a school, that means they're still doing some work in the background, so go back and check it and they'll help you out. Let's see. The net price calculator will work for you if you're an international student or if you're a domestic student. So no differences there. And just for the sake of completion, I'm going to finish our last 2 slides in our slideshow. This is our campus lawn, a few students walking across on the lawn. This is pre-COVID days. This is orientation when a few of our housing advisors that are hanging out together. And this is our most recent incoming class. We will have, in any given year, about 400 new students who arrive. That's a combination of first-year students and transfer students. Anywhere to 15 or 30 of them will be transfer students, and the rest will be first-year students. And I broke down the demographics essentially earlier of where folks are from. Pre-orientation programs are super fun. Backpacking trips, diversity trips that you can take with your classmates before you arrive. And career after Reed is something we spend a lot on, your career once you're done here. Center for Life Beyond Reed will do advising, and they actually start advising you your first year, when you arrive, about what careers you have, because maybe you do some internships, work on your resume, or you start building activities to be competitive for some of the jobs that you'll go for. But right away, just like study abroad, you want to start thinking about when you want to study abroad. You want to have those conversations early. Do the same with internships, externships, apprenticeships, different versions of the same thing. And we will help you succeed afterwards, whether that's grad school or even if it's in a career. or for some students, volunteer service. We've got your back in all of those areas. So that is the end of my formal presentation. We've got about 15 minutes for questions. And so I want to encourage folks to add questions if you have any, and I'm just going to answer those. And we will answer those as well. But I want to make sure that we cover all the ground in terms of what we have to offer and what you're thinking about. All right, so there's a question about to what extent is the net price calculator accurate? It's pretty accurate. Now, it's not perfect, it's not exact. You'll still need to go through financial aid because the questions that they ask you simply aren't as in-depth. You don't have your taxes done yet, you don't have your tax forms, and it's designed to be easy, right? It's designed for you to go in, put in a few numbers, and get a rough estimate of what it's like. Now, if it gives you an idea that, okay, this is within a ballpark, it gives you an opportunity to pursue. If you feel like you have really unique circumstances, we actually offer one-on-one visits with folks to talk with our financial aid staff. And so you can either get a draft financial aid package if you're a senior, or you can talk with our counselors about the type of considerations. We'll change your circumstances. But net price calculators are pretty good. The math behind it, people have really gotten it down these days.
Nguyen, can you talk about our testing options for next year?
Thank you, Reed. So as many of you know, testing has been a challenge. So between March and I think they're supposed to have SAT at the end of August. I don't know if that's still the case or not. But roughly the equivalent of 800,000 students have not been able to take the SAT or ACT during that time. For us, if we looked at our application, that would mean about a third to half the students who usually submitted their scores to apply for admission would not have test scores. And so what we've decided to do to support students who either have never taken the test or have taken the test, but they were going to take it a second time, because as many of the high school counselors know, ACT says on average, the second time students go up 2 points. And also the SAT says on average, you'll increase in your SAT score. And right now, some students don't feel as though their current score is their competitive score. So they too feel that they may be at a disadvantage. For the next 2 years, what we're telling students is that we won't consider your test when evaluating your application. That's called test blind. Test blind is different than test optional. What test optional says is if you don't want to share your test, if you don't think it's competitive, you can just not send it to us, and that's okay with us. And they'll also say, if you want to send your test score, you can send it to us, and that's okay with us. And what we're saying is, go ahead and send your test scores, but we're not going to look at them when we're reading your evaluation or evaluating your application. So why do we want you to still send it to us? Because we're doing this pilot for 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, we want to go back and look at the types of decisions we made and figure out if we want to continue doing it in ideally post-COVID times. And so any data that we have is helpful, but counselors will not be looking at your test scores when evaluating your application. I'm going to spend 2 more minutes on this, and I'm actually going to over-answer the question. So NACAC, this National Association for College Admission Counselors, a lot of colleges are a member of this organization, and every year they send colleges a survey and they say to colleges, hey, what's the most important thing for you when you're evaluating applications? And the most recent survey says this, and the surveys for the last 20 years say this. The most important thing for colleges are grades, your grades in your core academic courses, and the strength of your schedule. Top 3, every year after year after year. That first one, 75% of the colleges say that it is the most important. And then the next category, basically, good, excellent, and then good, 15% of the schools say that that's moderately important. So that's about 90% of the schools that's saying that this is one of the top criteria we will consider when considering you for admission. So when you think about that, the idea that colleges are focusing on your transcript and your grades makes total sense. They're doing it now, and that's what we're going to continue to do this year, is focus on your transcript to make informed decisions. Now, I know some of you have had pass-fail because of COVID. Some of you have had grades locked in. We understand that, and we're just gonna have to spend a lot of time taking into consideration your individual circumstances, and that's something we're really good at. So we're gonna work with you, and if we have questions, we're gonna call you, and we're gonna call your high school counselor, and we're gonna get answers before we make a decision. So this is gonna be something that we do in a very fair way that's intended to help back you up. Very long answer. I'm gonna jump around and hit some of these. I asked, let's see.
Leon, do you have favorite traditions at Reed, aside from Paideia? Do you have a favorite tradition at Reed, aside from Paideia?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm gonna have you answer via chat of the program a little bit about the classics and philosophy, just because those are defined programs. And so we will answer those and give you a little bit more information about those two departments. Other traditions on campus, there's actually a lot. I think schools with like a lot of traditions are very cool. When Hume opens our Hume 110 course, because it starts in ancient Greece, our students basically dress up in cosplay and welcome the first year students as they're coming in. They actually perform a play early on in the process that students put together themselves. We also have a celebration at the end of the year once our students graduate. So we have a capstone course called the senior thesis, which is an amalgam of all the work you've done, and you create a unique piece of literature of work. And your senior thesis is actually housed in the library in the thesis tower with every single thesis that was ever created at the college. They're actually research texts, should any other student want to use them. Now you get 3 of these books produced because you put one in the library, you keep one, and then you burn the 3rd one. It's a ceremony at the end of the year where you send the pages up to the gods. But it's this, it's the kickoff of what we call Ren Fair, which is a 3-day celebration. We have concerts on campus. We participate in a softball team with our student staff. We play against like the physics department, but it's a time where we're on campus, we're eating food, and we're celebrating our seniors who are about to be sent off once they graduate. The Doyle Owl is this owl that we all compete for. And if you see it on campus, there's this, scrum of people, trying to grab it. Steve Jobs stole it for a little bit. And so it reappears every once in a while to give people a fair chance to try to acquire the Doyle Owl. Now, what's interesting is the Doyle Owl is a lawn ornament that weighs about 400 or 500 pounds. So this is not just this small thing you can carry off. You need about 10 people to acquire it. In fact, the mission office had the Doyle Owl for a little bit about 1.5 years ago. If you go on our Instagram page, you'll see a nice photo with me and the Doyle Owl. We tucked it away in our closet and it just disappeared after 4 days. So I don't know where it went, but that's the tradition of the Doyle Owl. What separates Reed from other liberal arts colleges? Our approach to education is really focused. You know what? I'm actually going to answer that differently. We don't have any adjunct faculty. What is adjunct faculty? It's something that I think as a student who's starting this process right away probably just has no idea about how much their college career is going to be impacted. Adjunct faculty might be part-time professionals in their field who are teaching on a college campus. All of our faculty are full-time faculty. And I'm not just talking about the figure that says with the highest terminal degree. I mean, all of our faculty are fully hired by the college, our visiting faculty, which means they're teaching a full load. They're available for you for office hours. When I walk out of my office at night, they're in classes with study sessions with students. We are the only college that I know of that has no adjunct faculty. And on some college campuses, they might make up 10%, some colleges as much as 50%. So the people who are here are dedicated to your full development. And I actually think that's also one of the reasons why we're so productive in this, in creating PhDs per capita. The difference is our faculty. We do this teaching thing exceptionally well. If you do well at Reed, you will do well anywhere. Got about 5 minutes. I'm going to jump around a little bit. Let's see. So COVID times, what did Reed decide to do? We are in person. We're teaching hybrid courses, which means that about half of our courses are online, half of them are in person. And then of the half that are in person, about half of those have an online component. And of those that are online, about half of those have an in-person component. So you can effectively take 75% of our classes are available online and 75% are available in person. We're unique that we have an abnormally high residentiality for singles. While we have been creating more doubles to help support the community, about 700 of our 1,400 students will be living on campus, everyone in a single. And even though the standards say we can have 3 people in a res hall, it's going to be 1 person to a res hall, and they're going to be learning and living in learning communities where the people you live with are also connected to 2 of your classes. We have about 4 tents on campus that are bigger than the convocation tents, so we're going to be teaching classes outside, eating outside. There's going to be food delivery and packaged food for folks. So we've got an incredible plan to make sure that students and staff stay safe. We have an incredible testing regimen and are acquiring fast, rapid testing. And so many of the constructs that are necessary to have school safely in person are things that we are able to apply for this particular year. Let's see.
Miriam, can you speak a little bit about like how will we examine students who have pass and fail classes in the spring semester?
Yeah, so I alluded to that earlier. It's going to be on a very individual basis. If you have pass and fail, oftentimes if that's what your school district did, that's what you were authored into. So we're going to be taking a look at your earlier curriculum to evaluate your trajectory. And also for some students, we might ask for your first quarter grades or your mid-semester grades. But for the most part, to the end of your junior year is going to be where the scope of our most in-depth research goes for your transcript. And I promise y'all, no 2 states have the exact same plan. No 2 counties necessarily have the same plan. This is going to be done on an individual basis. We're just going to have to look at it, evaluate it, spend time with it, and connect with you and your high school counselor if you have any questions. Now I've got 2 minutes, and I promised Zach that we would finish on time. Your questions are exceptional. I just want to emphasize this. We have an information session every day. You have an admission counselor at Reed, and we have experimental programming, stuff we're trying, like taking you out in Portland proper and doing live sessions. We have live tours on campus. We have figured out the virtual stuff, and it's interesting and diverse. So I want to encourage you all to come and take advantage of it. And we have lots of videos of our previous sessions. So there's just no way I could have gotten to all of your questions right now, but they're exciting, interesting things happening at Reed. And I'd love to tell you more. So come and visit. It's reed.edu/visit. And it'll give you great opportunities to come and engage us. But I really enjoyed talking to you, and thanks so much for your time. I hope to see you soon.
Great, thank you so much for sharing this information on Reed College, and students and counselors, thank you for joining as well. As you close this box, a quick 4-question survey will show up, so we do ask for your feedback. We encourage you to check out the other CTCL sessions at strivescan.com/virtual/CTCL. Thanks everyone, have a great day.
Thanks.